All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 43 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL, and I'm with my main man, Bill at Super Duper Flex. Bill, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Some news just broke right before we started this, so at least we have something to talk about. No, there's a
Yeah,
lot to
man.
talk about. Man, one more episode after this, and then we're watching football. So that's pretty fantastic.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, next week is football eve. Next episode is football eve. That's so nice to say. And then after months of just camp reports and training camps and not seeing activity and games with teams playing other teams, it's going to be awesome, man. I can't wait. So, like Bill had mentioned, we're going to get to the news and kind of a breaking news from Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero before we came on. They're talking about Leonard Fournette. Now, as we all know, Monday we kind of all woke up to the news that Leonard Fournette was released, and then everybody was keeping an eye on waivers to see if he would clear waivers. I think it was about 50-50 on that. About 50% of people thought that he was going to clear, 50% thought somebody would take him. He did clear, and right before we came on, it's being reported that Leonard Fournette is going to sign with the Bucks. So Tom Brady assembling his superhero team. He had Godwin and Evans. He had OJ Howard and Gronk, and now he is getting his superhero running back in Leonard Fournette to round out that offense. So Bill, if it becomes a fact that he is a Tampa Bay Buck, how do you feel about that? What happens to his value at this point?
I mean, that's probably one of the best situations he could fall into if he decides to sign right away. I mean, it's just because of all the talent around him, and I think he fits pretty well with the Bucks because their line is a little suspect, and you would want a back who is a little bit more, you know, capable, a little bit more power. You know what I mean? And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure you get that with any of the other backs on their team. So he's going to bring something different than the other backs do. So I think that I think it's a decent place to go. I'm a little surprised that he signed so quickly. But
Yeah, and you know what? It is interesting. I thought he would sign quickly just because once waivers cleared, I think everyone had an idea a whether or not they wanted him on their team, or and then if they did want him on his team, they had an idea of how much they wanted to pay him. So really, it was just about you know getting him an offer, him kind of perusing the offers, see what would be best for him. I know there was rumblings yesterday that the Chiefs were interested. With their salary cap situation, I don't know what they really could have offered him, but that was a rumor going around that the Chiefs were interested. The Bucks are another. I mean, at this point in time, we have to call them a Super Bowl contender. They have Brady. They have the pass catching weapons, and now they have a back that can kind of do it all. I mean, a lot of people were arguing the merits of Leonard Fournette over Twitter after he got released. But we have to remember that he had, I believe, and I'm not looking at the stats here, so if I'm wrong, somebody will let me know. I believe he had over 1,100 yards and 70 receptions. So he can run the ball, he can catch, he can do a little bit of everything. So, and I think in a Bruce Arians offense, he kind of fits right in. He can pass block, he can catch out of the backfield if they need him to, and he can rush the ball when they need him to. And obviously, the guy doesn't wear down because he got over 300 touches last year. He won't get that this year. I think everyone can agree on that. But I think he will slide in well in that Bruce Arians offense.
so there's a tweet that just popped up talking about the Bucks offense and how crazy it looks, like with quarterback Brady, running back Fournette, wide receivers Evans and Godwin, and Gronk as the tight end. But I mean, list the 5 offensive linemen. I mean, that's always going to be my concern. That was an issue last year, and this is the same thing with everybody getting so excited about the Browns last year. I mean, understand there was other things going on, but they had a really poor offensive line, and that basically blew everything up on top of the coaching. And I mean, so I'm going to temper my expectations a little bit. I don't think that's going to be some ridiculously elite offense. But I mean, he's definitely a great piece to be added to the team, because I think he brings something, that no one else does. He's just a good complement to the rest of the team, I guess.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think he fits in well. I think he can do a lot of different things. He's a piece that can be used. I agree with you. The offensive line isn't good, and I believe they drafted someone in the first round on the offensive line, so hopefully he gets acclimated quickly and can be a player. But I think their best offensive lineman from last year opted out, if I remember correctly. So if I am right about that, they're now already kind of down a guy in a position that they're weak at.
Yeah, I was actually going to respond. Okay, you can name every position player. Name one offensive lineman. And I mean, probably 80% of people cannot name one of them. You know what I mean?
For the Bucks or just in general?
For the Bucks, maybe just in general.
And here's the funny part. You say that, and it's true, because I know the offensive lineman who opted out. His first name is Donovan. Can't tell you what his last name
is. There you go. So you got half of a name.
Because I want to say Donovan Mitchell, and I know that's a basketball player.
That is the name of a basketball player.
So I know that is not the correct answer, but that's the only Donovan that
I'll give you half a point.
That's the only Donovan that pops in my head right now. So, but no, you're right. I mean, they knew it was a weakness, and they actually, I think, traded up one spot with the 49ers, who are kind of the master of that draft play, getting teams to trade up one spot to get guys. But the Bucks actually traded up one spot this year in the draft to grab an offensive lineman. So obviously they knew it was a weakness, and they were trying to make it as good as they could make it for Brady's run. And I wouldn't be shocked if you see maybe an older name lineman get cut when we have to cut down to 53. I think that's Saturday, actually. Or maybe that's next Saturday.
It is.
One of the Saturdays. They may sign a guy or two like that maybe is a little older but has some name recognition and maybe a little bit left in the tank to try to keep Brady upright.
It is definitely this Saturday, because next Saturday there'll be football already played. So.
Oh crap, you are right. We are so close, and it's so weird because we're so close, but it still feels so far away, because we haven't had kind of that preseason countdown, like, oh, it's week 4, it's all the nobodies that are going to get cut next,
It's going to be so bad, the football, and it's going to just be so glorious, like, at the same time, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I said this last week.
It's like going on, yeah, I'll shut up.
I said this last week, the first month of the season is going to look a lot like preseason football, because you're going to have a lot of new guys, whether they're rookies, whether they're free agents, that this is the first time they're playing with the other 10 guys on the field at game speed. I mean, practice is one thing. Yeah, practice helps, and practice makes you better, all that stuff, but it's not the same as being in a game. And, every player says it, when they're coming back from injury. Yeah, practice is good, but man, you don't really kind of get nervous until you get into a game, because it's totally different. And, that's the case, and teams like Kansas City, who are bringing back most of their, starting lineup on both sides of the ball, they're going to be, they're going to have an advantage because they're not really breaking in new players and doing all that kind of stuff. And teams that have had massive
Yeah.
overhauls, teams kind of like the Jets and the Dolphins, who have brought in a lot of rookies and free agents. I think, I mean, both of those teams aren't really good either, but I think you're going to see them struggle even more because they haven't had the time to put it all together. So we talked about Leonard Fournette. Oh, one more thing, just in case you want the Leonard Fournette story to get a little better. He's also filing a grievance against the Jags for like $4.7 million. So that's going to be a fun little story to watch if Tampa Bay ends up paying him $1 million or so, and then he wins his grievance and gets almost $5 million from the Jags. He's going to be doing pretty good for himself. But we're going to move from one running back to another now. Alvin Kamara missed 4 days of practice due to a contract dispute. And there have been rumors that he could be traded. And now people are starting to say, well, no, we're close on a contract. Alvin Kamara came back to practice today. Man, that's a mess. And I hope for the New Orleans fan base that they just pay Alvin Kamara because, I mean, you only have a year, maybe two, if you're really lucky, of Drew Brees. Just pay the weapons on that team and try to win one more Super Bowl so he can ride out into the sunset with another ring on his hand. Bill, what do you think about this? Do you think New Orleans ends up signing him? Do you think he could actually get traded? What are your thoughts about this?
So I think that Joe Mixon had migraines, and then all of a sudden they cleared up once he signed his contract. And so I kind of just think this is positioning, for the contract. I don't think they're trading him. I mean, I think I was listening to somebody earlier. Was it the Yahoo podcast, I think? And they were saying like that they'll listen for trades, but they're not going out looking for trades or anything like that. It's just one of those things where, it seems like they're about $4 million apart in what they want. Like Kamara wants CMC money. They want to pay him Mixon money. And there's the argument is that, I can understand both of them. So they'll figure out somewhere in the middle that works for them, and he'll be on the team. And I don't think they're gonna not sign him. I mean, I guess worst case they could just franchise him next year. So, but I think that I think something will get resolved because I think they both want to be there. They want him to be there and he wants to be there. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about the trade. I just think that they're both positioning, and that's why this kind of stuff gets out into the news, is to just kind of maybe sway the general population as to what's happening. But yeah, I'm not worried. I mean, if I had him on my teams, which I do, I mean, there's at least a tinge of concern, but it's not anything that I'm going out and looking to make moves to cover up for him. So I'm not going to go and overpay for Latavius right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point too, bringing Latavius Murray into the conversation because there was a point throughout this whole ordeal where then it came out that Alvin Kamara had gotten an epidural to his spine for some reason, and then it looks like it came out either today or yesterday that it wasn't really an epidural. It was something else that's a lot less worrisome, put it that way. So there was a point where I think maybe people heard epidural and saw medical professionals on Twitter saying if it is an epidural, that is scary. And I mean, I agree just from the fact that, my wife has had 3 kids, I've seen her get an epidural. I mean, I know the level of pain you have to be in order for them to say, "Hey, let's schedule up an epidural." So if it really, if it really was that bad, I could understand the concern. But now it looks like that wasn't the case, which probably dropped Murray's value a little bit now if people have seen the same news. But it's I think Latavius Murray in both redraft and dynasty has some good standalone value for probably for what you really have to pay for him. But if you're rushing out there to overpay for him because you think that Alvin Kamara is going to get traded or Alvin Kamara is hurt, I think that's where you could be making the mistake and you could be giving up too much value in order to get a guy that does have some standalone value, but it is, it does have its limitations.
I mean, like, so if you have Latavius on your team and somebody comes back knocking on the door asking for Latavius right now, what are you asking? Late first, early second, somewhere in that range?
I'm probably thinking more second-ish. Now I guess it all depends on, am I eager to get rid of Latavius Murray, or am I willing to hold out for maybe the first 4 weeks of the season, see what happens? Maybe it is, maybe
right.
Alvin
But I mean,
Kamara
I'm just saying, like, you'd be rolling the dice, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're the person with Kamara and you're going out there knocking on the door to get Latavius, there's a built-in like value bump for Latavius right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it would just be like, you could end up paying, like, let's say a late first, early second for him. And then he just doesn't, then he ends up being what he was last year.
Right.
And he's a 30-some-year-old running back. So, like, those are the things, like, I'm willing to pay a little extra juice if we find out Kamara's holding out. You know what I mean? Like, make that move after. Don't make it out of, like, discomfort. You know what I mean? Like, make it out of, like, knowing what's going on. And if you got to pay a little extra because of it, that's way better than paying a first-round value for a 30-some-year-old running back that's probably not going to be doing much after this year.
Yeah, and it's funny because we talk about this, but we see it happen all the time. We see kind of crazy deals where, I mean, I think in one league I saw Gronk go for like a first. Maybe there was a little side piece thrown in with Gronk. I don't even remember now, but I remember seeing Gronk for first, and I was like, wow. Like I personally don't understand it because when was the last time we saw Gronk be Gronk? 3 years ago?
I mean, being healthy and everything, it might even be 4. I don't even recall now.
Right. Even if we go with 3, I mean, we're talking about a year away from playing, a year being hurt, and then being good. So it's like, we have to watch out for that stuff, and I know people will probably throw this in my face because I've talked about on the show, I'm willing to, roll the dice in a startup on AJ Green, but at least he has been in an NFL building, having NFL doctors working on him. Gronk wasn't in the league last year. He was totally away from probably any, real, healthcare professionals. He was probably just having a good time, living, a very good life, and not being around an NFL program. And I think there is a lot that can be said for that.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, and for him, at least there's there's the price is lower right now. So it's like you're getting AJ Green for less than Gronk. And that's just crazy,
Right. And our man Drew, he nailed it perfectly. Panic premium. We see it all the time. A guy goes down, there's an injury, there is a trade, there's a Leonard Fournette situation, and then people just start, they start doing crazy things because they're worried that either this is where they're going to get this insane value that they've never got before, or they're trying to sell for anything that they can. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we start seeing, Rojo trades where Rojo's getting traded for a third. And, yeah, maybe Rojo never puts it together, in the league. And maybe this is where Leonard Fournette comes out and does what he did last year. But there's a real situation. Leonard Fournette was not the picture of consistency before last year. Between injuries and suspensions, he wasn't out there for 16 games for very many seasons. So, we may be thinking that this is the Leonard Fournette show now. Week 4 he gets hurt, and then it's Ronald Jones, and he's kind of So we have to be very careful about as Drew perfectly labeled it, the panic premium. But we went heavy on the running backs here, Bill. I did throw this on the news because I think it's not so important for the player involved, but for other players on the team. Tyrell Williams has been placed on the IR for torn labrum. So Tyrell the Gazelle we won't see him this year. There was some talk about him. How much could he get on the field with Ruggs and Edwards, who were two high value draft picks that the Raiders used? Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfrow. Where was Tyrell going to fit in? And now we know he's going to fit in as a member of the IR. Does this do anything for you as it concerns any of the other receiving options on the team?
Yeah, because I don't really agree with what you had just said. Like, he was a starter, no question. He's the best wide receiver on that roster right now. He may not be the most talented, but he's the best wide receiver. He's the only true professional on that whole team. I mean, you got Ruggs, you got Bryan Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, Marcel Aitman, Nelson Aguilar. Like, those are the other wide receivers. So he's the only true pro on that team. You could argue that, I mean, although he's probably better fit for like a second option, he's like the best option of that group right now, just based on inexperience of the more talented players. And so with him being gone, I mean, these guys are going to get thrown in, and I mean, they're going to sink or swim. I'm not sure how I feel. I mean, I guess I feel good about it if I have those rookies, just because they're going to get higher volume, but they're not going to be put onto the field just for in circumstances where they have a better chance of succeeding. And that would be my concern, is that these young guys get out there and they're not being put out there when it's beneficial. They start getting frustrated, and maybe they don't grow as much as they should if they had the chance to do that. I think it's a huge hit for them. Like, I mean, you look at that wide receiver core, unless they're able to pick up another pro. I mean, regardless, anybody they pick up is going to be somebody who's not familiar with this offense. And you have nobody on that of what I've talked about that has more than 1 year experience in this offense. And I mean, I guess that was the case with Tyrell too. So, I mean, Hunter Renfrow is literally the wide receiver with the most experience in this offense now. So it's just, they're in trouble. Like, I mean, Josh Jacobs, man, Darren Waller, those are the guys. And I mean, it's going to be fun though. Like, I mean, those guys are so talented, like Ruggs and Edwards. Like, it's going to be really exciting to see how they do. They might end up having to play, oh my God, what's his name? The dude from Kentucky.
Lynn Bowden.
Yeah, Lynn Bowden. He was a wide receiver first, right? And then he played quarterback when they lost their quarterback, or their quarterback wasn't good. and then he basically just became a wildcat quarterback. So that's why they drafted him as a running back. But he is a good receiver, so you might see him out there too. But that's still another rookie, and so this is like the Fab Five. You know what I mean? Like when they brought out all the freshmen playing for U of M, and that's what this is. It's like, okay, we have all these young guys. Let's see what happens. And like Aguilar is a sneaky play. Like, I mean, if I have like an empty, I don't ever, but if I had an empty roster spot at the end, I mean, he might be somebody I would consider adding until he may, drop 2 or 3 passes the first week.
Yeah, and you may not have an empty spot, but you may have a spot you can churn. Maybe you picked up. No spots to churn.
No, my teams are so deep. It's a fault of mine. Like, I mean, I should be trading like the depth for, you know what I mean? Like, I shouldn't be in that position is my point. So I'm not bragging. I'm actually being critical of myself. Like, it's bad. You should always have like 2 or 3 roster spots that you can churn at the back end of the roster. Like if you got to trade a few guys to upgrade at other, 2-for-1s or something, even if you got to take a little bit of a hit, it might be worth it. But that's my biggest fault in Dynasty.
That might make you dangerous this year with COVID and just regular injuries. That you might actually benefit from all of that depth this year, because I think by the time we're all said and done, there are going to be some crazy names that we're not even talking about right now that we look at that won you weeks or possibly won you championships because of all the insanity going on. And
yep, very well could be.
I looked at Tyrell as a gatekeeper. I felt like the first 4 weeks were going to be a lot of Tyrell, and they were going to mix the young guys in, because I think that's really kind of where they want to go. I think that's where John Gruden wants to go. He wants to eventually be in a spot where Ruggs and Edwards are out there a lot with Hunter Renfrow. So I kind of always looked at Tyrell as a gatekeeper, just kind of based on what they did during the offseason. Not necessarily that I think Tyrell is a bad player, because I actually think Tyrell is talented. He got put into a rough spot last year because he was supposed to be kind of the second fiddle to Antonio Brown. And then a couple weeks before the season starts, we all know what happened with AB. And then it's kind of like, all right, Tyrell, you're the guy now. And,
and he started out really good, and then he got hurt. And then that was what the issue was. And I mean, they're paying him $11 million a year. They didn't sign him because they think he's just a doorway to these wide receivers and rookie wide receivers. I mean, we've seen some guys succeed, but I mean, it's really hard for rookies to succeed, especially this year. I think it's going to be even more challenging. So yeah, I mean, you and I are on opposite pages of, where Tyrell is, but regardless, it doesn't matter, because now we're just going to see these guys getting thrown in, and it's going to be fun to watch. Like, there's no way around that. I'm looking forward to it. Like, they're going to be a really interesting team.
Yeah, I mean, they have Josh Jacobs, who, I mean, had 1,150 and 7 last year, and didn't play 16. Like, let's remember that.
It's 14 games, I think, or 13.
Yeah, that sounds good for a 16-game season, but you have to realize, I think he played 14. Okay. I'm not looking at anything, so I could be dead wrong about that. But in any case, whether it was 13 or it was 14, that's a really good season. So they have a really good back there. Darren Waller really showed up last year and showed out. Hunter Renfrow picked it up at the end of the season. And so they have 3 good pieces right there. And then if, Ruggs and or Edwards can get up to snuff quick enough. I didn't want to say it like that, but they could have a very explosive offense in Las Vegas. And 13 games, 1,150 and 7 TDs in 13 games. If Josh Jacobs can stay healthy, man,
Andy was playing hurt for a little while. You saw how upset he got when he didn't have to play, or he couldn't play, because he didn't play, and then he came back and tried to play.
And
So
they pulled him.
Yeah, there was a couple games in there that his stats were, affected at least by his injury. So, I mean, you could almost argue that could be 12 games or 12 and a half games, something like that. So, like, I mean, if he played 75% of the season or 80% of the season, you're going to add 20% to those stats.
Okay.
Like, that's pretty impressive, and
and
that's 1,400 yards, like, and
and he's a guy in redraft that it's funny. I listen to people talk about it. He's a guy you can get in the back end of the first round, maybe even the top of the second, depending on who you're drafting with. And people are like upset by it. They're like, well, I got Josh Jacobs. And I'm like, do you realize what Josh Jacobs did last year as a rookie? 11-50-7. Even if that's what he does over a 16-game span for you this year, you're very happy getting that in the 9 hole or the 10 hole or at 13. So I think we got to remember that, and I think the offense will be better this year. So it may give him even more opportunity to feast, but that's what we think about the Las Vegas Raiders for this year. But we hit the news, we hit it hard, we talked a lot about it, and now we're going to go into the timeline, and we're going to go to a tweet from one of our FTC members, Jerry O'Shea. And if you're listening going, well, what is the FTC? It's the Fantasy Timeline Chat. We got about a dozen people in there already, and the chat is lit. And this is not something that we are promoting on Twitter. This is not something we are promoting in other places. We just talk about it here on the pod because we just want listeners in there. We want people who listen to us, who, dig what we're doing and dig just talking fantasy and life in general. Trust me, that chat doesn't always stick to fantasy. We talk about everything under the sun, and it's a good time. It's all quality people. It's all people just looking to chat and have a good time, get a couple laughs. There are gifs and memes that get thrown in there that we get a good chuckle on. I threw the Dave Chappelle meme where he's pretending to be the crackhead and he's scratching himself because we were talking about just how much in general we all love fantasy and dynasty. So if you're listening to this and you're not in that chat, just send me a DM, Josh at Real Fantasy TL. Send Bill a DM at Super Dupaflex, or send at the show handle at Fantasy Timeline and just say, yo, let me into that. I want to be in that. Bill and I both had a friend that reached out to us throughout the week and said, man, listen to the pod. I want to be a part of that. And we threw him right in. And, we throw everybody in. If you hit us with the DM and go, hey, can you throw me in? You usually are in there within 5 or 10 minutes. And then you just see everything that's going on. And trades do get talked about. And, anytime I see an interesting news blurb, I throw it in there just to, get people riled up. So, So this is from our FTC member, Jerry O'Shea at Jerry Shea FF. This is a PPR 12-team dynasty league. So it looks like a trade maybe that he put out there. So DJ Moore on one side, or Terry McLaurin and Christian Kirk on the other side. Bill, I'm gonna let you hit this one first. What side are you liking?
I like the McLaurin Kirk side. I think that it's very easy for me to envision Terry McLaurin scoring the same amount of points as DJ Moore. And then you get Christian Kirk, who's a solid, probably wide receiver 3-ish, added for depth. So you're getting two guys in the year of COVID where you probably want to have extra depth on your team. And Terry McLaurin might be 2 years older than DJ Moore, but like he's shown just like DJ Moore. And I mean, yes, I think that DJ Moore probably has a little bit more upside, but I don't think it's material enough for me to give up another wide receiver of Kirk's, ilk. So I would prefer to get the two guys and a guy. I think I will get an extra 150 points in fantasy points in this trade. So yeah, that's what I would do.
And I am with you 100%. I am also going to go the McLaurin, Christian Kirk side. Look, there's not a lot of weapons in Washington. We can say what we want. Maybe, Antonio Gibson is going to be a thing. Maybe Gandy Golden is going to be a thing. But we're talking about a lot of ifs and maybes and could be's. Maybe Steven Sims is a thing. Who knows? We talked about Kelvin Harmon until he tore his ACL. It's Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, none of those names are exciting, right?
No, you say, like, I'm saying those names and I'm kind of going to sleep on us because, I mean, you're not like, oh man, well, you maybe talk about Gandy Golden and you go, wow, well, his draft profile and he played at Liberty and he balled out at Liberty and he's a size speed freak, but we don't know what he's going to do in the end. We've seen Terry McLaurin do it. We've seen Terry McLaurin be dominant on a team that, guess what? Here's a spoiler alert. They didn't have playmakers last year either, and he still balled out. So we know that even in the worst case scenario, if all these guys flame out and they're not anything to write home about, we still know Terry McLaurin can get the job done. We saw him do it with Case Keenum. We saw him do it with Dwayne Haskins. So it's not even that he needs an elite quarterback to get it done either. Like, we've seen him do it with guys that are guys at the quarterback position. So, yeah, I'm going with that. And then Christian Kirk, and I'm going to actually weave this into another tweet. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just going to say the part that really interested me on this tweet was the results so far of that poll, where it's like 64% in favor of DJ Moore. So, like, oh my God, like, you can get more on top of it on some of those trades. You know what I mean? And so that's something that maybe if you have DJ Moore and you're not quite as high as everybody else is, then you can make a move to get a haul for him.
And and here's the thing. I'm actually looking at the updated kind of percentages right now. DJ Moore is at 62%, and Terry McLaurin and Christian Kirk are at 38%. So, like, looking at that, try to get a second thrown on. I mean,
right.
It seems like the percentages you're saying that is not an unreasonable thing to ask for.
Yeah.
And I want to wrap this one up because I actually want to weave Christian Kirk into another tweet that we saw on the timeline this year. Christian Kirk had over 100 targets last year. And that may be hard to believe because, he was banged up a little bit. Larry Fitz was still on the team. Kyler Murray was a rookie and getting used to the NFL. That offensive line was straight garbage. The running game was kind of hit and miss. David Johnson was good for a little bit. Then he got hurt. Chase Edmonds was good for a little bit. And then kind of Kenyon Drake came in there and kind of wrapped the season on a high note. But Christian Kirk, through all of that, got over 100 targets. And, that's just something I want to throw out there as we weave into this next tweet from Dave Klug. Dave, I hope I said your last name right. At DKlug90. Can someone explain to me how fantasy football Twitter can simultaneously love Kyler Murray and hate DeAndre Hopkins? So I'll start off here. I don't think people hate DeAndre Hopkins. I just think people do not want to draft DeAndre Hopkins where I think you need to actually draft DeAndre Hopkins in order to get him. And I think that is the disconnect. Because I don't think I've seen one person on Twitter go, DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to be good anymore. Like he's gone to Arizona and he's just going to be a bad player. But people also don't want to give up a top 18 pick to get him because let's face it, it's a new team. We're in the season of COVID, so there hasn't been as many padded practices. There haven't been any preseason games. The time to get used to a new quarterback has been severely diminished. And you know me, Bill. I did some very very shallow diving on some stats here. So I want to throw this out and maybe you can give your view on it afterwards. So Hopkins has been coached by Bill O'Brien. Whatever your feelings are about Bill O'Brien, his entire career minus his rookie season. So he's always been working in the same offense. He's been doing the same thing. There hasn't been a lot of change for DeAndre Hopkins. And yes, I know that there were Brock Osweiler seasons and, there were some seasons with some bad quarterbacks before Deshaun Watson came into town. But the offensive scheme was the same for almost his entire career. And then we look at, well, what is that scheme? And, this isn't an entire scheme thing, but the last time that the Texans had a receiver besides DeAndre Hopkins get more than 75 targets, not 75 catches, 75 targets, was 2016. So we're looking at an offense that said, hey, DeAndre Hopkins, you're really good. We're going to throw it to you a lot, catch the ball, and do what you can with it. I know 2016 doesn't sound like a long time ago, but that's a long time ago in football years. And now we bring this back to the Cardinals. Both Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk had over 100 targets last year. So we can't expect DeAndre Hopkins to go into Arizona and just be the target hog that he was in Houston. There are other guys that are going to get fed. Yes, their targets are probably going to drop slightly because DeAndre Hopkins is in town. But realize DeAndre Hopkins' targets are going to drop as well because Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald are still on the field. And we're not even talking about what Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds can do catching out of the backfield. So I think that's why people don't hate DeAndre Hopkins, but they're lower on him. But for all those same reasons, that's why people are high on Kyler Murray because he has a massive upgrade at wide receiver 1, and that just gives him another big-time weapon on top of Kenyon Drake to maybe break out this year. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting stat, and I mean that I think Fitz is going to take a little bit of a backseat this year. So maybe he gets some of those. Kirk may take a little bit of a hit. Maybe not. I don't know. I was just looking up like volume stats for Arizona and Houston to see if maybe that would help him. And actually, in passes per game, Arizona was 18th and Houston was 19th.
Yeah.
So they are right, basically 0.7 passes more per game for Arizona. So you're looking at 10 passes. And so that's not going to affect it. So it's a matter of you're coming in. Granted, the scheme that he runs isn't super complex, so I don't think he's going to have a problem, getting comfortable with it. It's just a matter of timing. And that's going to be the thing that, they're going to have to work on a little bit. And maybe they'll get it down and he'll be great. I mean, he's inarguably one of the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. And We said that last year with Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of situations where, yes, we want to believe he's going to like be amazing. Now, the other thing is there's a lot of other wide receivers that can catch the ball in Arizona. Plus, you got good backs and all of that. You got a mobile quarterback, and that's why people love Kyler Murray. He's mobile. That he gets that regardless, of the wide receivers. But he also has just added a great wide receiver. But he also already has those other wide receivers, and that's the thing. Like, Hopkins is going to take a little bit of a hit where Kyler gets a bump for it. So That's where the disconnect comes. And it's not, I mean, I know it's all hyperbole. Like, why does people love him and hate him? I mean, okay. I think that everything is so, everything's so black and white with everybody nowadays. It's so crazy. Like, it's either all or nothing, you know what I mean? And there's no like middle ground. And I think that, it's just a little bit of, both guys are moving in different directions in what expectations are this year. And that's why.
Well, and Bill, you mentioned all the weapons in Arizona, and I'm a little mad at you because you didn't mention star of the small screen, Dan Arnold at the tight end position, man. Dan Arnold is going to break out this year. Haven't you been paying attention to Twitter, man? It's
oh my God,
Dan Arnold season.
I'm going to say this right now. Like, they don't use their tight ends a lot in this offense. So, like, okay, yes, he may start, but who was the tight end last year? It was a dude,
Williams.
Max Williams. Thank you. I was going to say the dude from Minnesota, University of Minnesota, and he was their starter, and he's a decent, obviously not great, but so either is Dan Arnold, and you got to remember last year he was with the Saints and they cut him, so it's not like they were all gung ho for him. I mean, he is who he is. He's a wide receiver playing tight end.
Yeah. So
like that's the benefit there, right? Like he's kind of like the and here you're gonna need help on this guy's name too. He's the tight end with Washington right now. He started out as a quarterback, then he became a wide receiver.
Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas. Okay, he was with the Lions last year, and I mean they didn't use him either. It's like they threw him out there every so often. These guys just can't, they're a big-bodied guy, wide receiver, that they try to call a tight end. And there's Paulson. Just better Logan Thomas.
No, Paulson.
No.
I
don't think so. Maybe.
This is what we know about.
Listen, this is a great podcast with the.
Listen, I
just added him in one of my leagues, so I know it's Logan something.
If anyone knows the tight end depth chart,
I'm gonna look it up right now. But regardless, point being is these guys. There's a reason they bounce around from all these teams. People like the idea of having these wide receivers as tight ends, but then when they see how limited they are and what they can do for them, they're not out there enough to get enough volume, and that's what you're gonna want. And like he's never gonna be out there to block. He's never gonna, there's better options at the slot. So where do you use him? And that's the biggest thing. So
that was
Logan Thomas. Yeah. It is Logan Thomas.
I doubted myself.
Yeah. But that's my thing on those guys. Like I chase those guys too, and I've just learned that it's just so fruitless. There's so many other guys out there that could end up. These guys are never going to be prolific. I'm sorry. If they do, they're a unicorn. And I'm willing to not score a unicorn just to save the roster spot, to be honest.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you. In redraft, sure, you want to use the last round pick because you got some faith. Go ahead, whatever. In redraft, you're probably not putting any real value into him. You're probably getting him later on. He's probably, the 30th or 40th tight end off of the board at that point, whatever,
Yep.
Again, go back to Drew and Panic Premium. Don't read a story from a beat writer about how Dan Arnold is going to break out and waste a second round pick to go get him, and then sit there crying after week 8 when you realize that Dan Arnold has 20 catches for 200 yards and a touchdown, and you're like, what? Why did I do this to myself?
Yep. And he's a guy that I prospected a year or two ago. I'm just like, oh, okay, he's a wide receiver playing tight end. He's with the Saints. That's interesting. And they threw him out there every so often, but just not enough to like do anything. And Logan Thomas, to show you, this is a 2 tight end league, and I just picked him up on waivers for $1.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, that league at least is aware enough to know that these guys are, he's like my 5th tight end. So it's like, whatever. And then he's an easy drop if he doesn't get the volume that, people hope or whatever. So that's kind of what you do. If you do have him on your roster, don't hold them for a long time, hoping that things change, because if they show you in the first 2 weeks that, he's not getting utilized, he's not going to get utilized. And if he does, you're never going to know what game it is where he's going to pop. So why keep him? Because he's not going to pop 3-4 games in a row.
I agree with you, man. I can't. I said it as a joke, and then we really went on a kind of a deep dive on Dan Arnold. Not where I thought the pod was going to go this week.
Hey, that's what we do.
That is what we do. So if you're listening for the first time, realize that is what we do. But
FTC's even better.
So Dave, I hope I explained to you about why people love what Kyler Murray can become this season and dislike where you have to get DeAndre Hopkins and not DeAndre Hopkins himself. I hope that helped. This next one here is from Kyle Gerard Bauer at the fellow KGB. If there was one guy to unseat CMC as the RB1 this year, who is it? We're probably going to say the same guy. So, Bill, I'll let you go first, and then I'll pivot into someone else.
Well, I'm just not going to say him because I think that's the obvious. I think we both think Barkley is the answer.
Correct.
And so I was trying to look at somebody else that's not Barkley just because I think that he's the obvious alternative to CMC. Because he has the, pass catching ability and, kind of a little bit of a offense that's opened up a little bit and that sort of thing. And they're going to need to pass the ball a bit. I don't think they're going to be like so he's going to get a lot of receptions, but regardless, and I think like at the second or the last X number of games, he was the running back 1 anyway. Barkley was last year. So he's already shown he can do that. But I was looking at the list and I'm like going, man, like, if I don't pick one of those top guys, like who catches my eye as to somebody who could do that? So first off, you'd have to be a good receiving back. You'd have to be a back that doesn't have a lot of competition behind him. You have to be on a team that I think could be a winning team. So there's like a lot of things that like, those are the things at least I was considering when I'm looking at these guys. I mean, Zeke's an obvious option. I'm not sure he's necessarily going to be the receiving guy that's going to get like enough volume to be up that high. But because the offense is going to be arguably good, but we just got to worry about their defense. That was somebody I wasn't real sure about including. And plus, that's a pretty easy one too, if you're going to pick one of those top 3 guys. So it got down to me deciding between Joe Mixon. No, that's not it. It was Aaron Jones or Miles Sanders. Aaron Jones got some competition, so I'm probably not going him. So I think Miles Sanders is just my guy that I would pick. Like if things go right and he ends up getting the volume that some people expect, I don't expect him, but he's the guy that I think could be a sneaky guy that, like, if we were going to say who has a chance to get up to that level, like he was the guy that kind of popped into my head as to like, because their team could be good. I don't know. Like it's so hard to know like if a team's gonna be good or not right now. But Miles Sanders is one, probably Mixon if Burrow is as good as reports are, because apparently he's just like better than expected already. So
All right, so
blah blah blah. Me babbling. Sorry.
no, no, man, I like the way you talk through it because I mean, I think if we both had to go to Vegas and put money on this, we would both put our money on Barkley.
For sure.
And when I gave my answer to this tweet, pretty much everybody who had already answered had said Barkley. So I said, well, I also think Barkley, but if we want a dark horse pick, and I think this is a dark horse pick, and I'm picking Zeke because I think that if we asked 100 people, I mean, probably 90 of them would say Barkley. But if we took Barkley off the table, I don't think that Zeke would get as many votes as a guy like Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders.
Oh, I disagree. I think that there's a sizable difference. Like, I think that Zeke is the obvious number 3 here. Like, I think there's 3 guys that are just the best running backs that you would want, and it's those top 3. And there's a sizable difference between those. I think you would see like 70% of people saying that they would want Zeke.
And it's funny because I feel opposite about it, and I think it's actually one of the reasons that you brought up about Zeke is that people may not put him in that could be number 1 territory because he's probably not going to get the pass catching work, which I think you do need in order to possibly jump into that RB number 1 overall territory. Now, obviously, we're not sitting here projecting injuries. If one of the big time pass catchers go down, then yes, maybe Zeke's pass catching numbers do go up. But I think if everybody stays healthy and plays 16, you're probably not going to see you're not going to see that season. What was it, 2 years ago, where I think he caught 70 passes or something like that. You're probably not going to see that again because, I mean, you have 3 pretty damn good wide receivers. There's a guy in Blake Jarwin that everyone is, projecting to be a breakout. Tony Pollard is going to catch some passes. So it's going to be hard for Zeke to get a big number. But Zeke is also one of those guys that if he can get the massive running work that he got his first couple years in the league, he could survive on minimal pass catching work and just kind of run up his numbers through just rushing the ball. So I love Miles Sanders, though. I love that pick. I think that he has the ability to do that if he gets the work. I mean, there's 2 different schools of thought on that because a lot of people, myself included, say, well, Doug Peterson doesn't give that massive workload to one guy. He's always mixing in guys here and there and doesn't give a Miles Sanders that kind of workload. But if he does, I mean, he catches the ball like a beast. He runs well. I mean, I think he has all the ability in the world to make that jump if he's given the opportunity.
Right. And I think that the question for me was like, the way I interpreted it at least was like, okay, who has a chance to like, put up that type of, that level of points. And it's like, it has to be somebody who's got those skills, you know what I mean? And is a little bit more dynamic. And so like, I don't hate Mixon either. I just don't like their line, so there's a lot of like, but I don't like Philly's line right now either, right? They've lost like 2 guys. So
yeah.
So it's kind of tough. It's like, really, it's just those top 3 I feel super comfortable with. And then after that, it's like, maybe you give me Jonathan Taylor.
Real
I didn't even
dark
think
horse.
about that, but he's not a receiver either. So it's
He's
like,
not.
maybe it's, I mean, I'm not that guy. I mean, I don't want to be that homer, but maybe DeAndre Swift's the guy, like he could be, because they're in an offense with a pretty good offensive line. They got talent all around. If Stafford plays like he did last year, they could have a pretty good offense. And like, he might be one of those guys. I mean, that's like 0.02% that happens, but You know, like he has the skill set to be able to do that, I guess is my point.
And I want to throw this one up here. Our man FF Swirly from Periscope here, James Conner. Man, if
That's
that
actually
dude,
not a bad one.
if that dude can stay healthy,
Yeah,
I mean,
I like that.
if he plays 16 games, there are going to be a lot of people that regretted letting him fall to the third round
Yeah,
in redraft leagues. There are going to be a lot of people if he plays 16 games who drafted James Conner in the third round that are going to be counting their money after they won their leagues because I mean he could be a number one guy, and even if he's not, he could be like a top 3 guy and really kind of make a lot of people unhappy with some of the picks they used in the first couple of rounds. So we got one more here, Bill. We're going to wrap it up on a good note.
all right.
We got our man P-Win Dynasty at P-Win Dynasty. He completed a hashtag dynasty trade in a vanilla 1 quarterback PPR league. Hey, man, if you like the league, it's not vanilla. It's fun. He took over an orphan last minute, and the rookie draft will be this week. So let me know where you're at here. Chris Carson and James Conner, the previously mentioned James Conner, or the 107 and the 112. Bill, I'm going to let you go first. Which side are you on and why?
So if I'm taking over an orphan, typically I don't like the players that are on my team. So I'm assuming that he got the picks for those 2 players. And if that's the case, I love it. I think that, getting the 107 and the 112 for 2 guys that you could argue aren't going to necessarily have a secure job next year, I'm all for it. I mean, I could see a contender doing it, but I still think that's a little bit of an overpay value-wise. So I'm all about the picks here.
With you 100%. It's the picks for me. I mean, yeah, I like what you brought to the table, Bill, saying, this is an orphan, so the team probably wasn't very good. And I mean, those 2 guys hurt dynasty owners last year. I mean, let's face it. James Conner probably got taken with some pretty serious capital after what he did in 2018. And he was battling injury all year. And Chris Carson battling both fumbles and injury, probably hurt that team. So to get 2 first-round picks for those 2 guys, 107, 112 in a 1 quarterback league. I mean, 107, you're probably looking at maybe a Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson type player,
Rager.
maybe Rager, maybe CeeDee Lamb if, the 5 running backs go off the board and someone else likes one of the other wide receivers we mentioned. And then 112, again, you're probably pulling another wide receiver because at that point in that second half of the draft is really when those top flight wide receivers go off the board. Maybe, maybe it's Henry Ruggs at 112. Brandon Ayuk, not a guy that I like, but, maybe he's there, you grab him. And when you have an orphan that you're rebuilding, those wide receivers stay on your team for a while. So if they're good, you have them for years while you're, rebuilding other spots on your team. So I always like when I take over an orphan, if I can use my first year rookie picks on mostly wide receivers, if that's the way the board falls to me, because I know that those guys will be on the team for a while if they pan out. So P-Win, if you got the picks, you win, and the poll, says this too. 65% for the picks and 35% for Carson and Conner. So, I think we agree with the majority here, which is funny because we usually don't. We're usually agreeing with the minority, but this time we're with the big dogs. We're with with the rest of the crew. So, Bill, I think that's it. Am I correct on that?
I think so. I think we got through everything.
We got through everything, man. We did it. We the preseason form. We don't need no preseason form. We're already mid-season form. We're killing it. We're knocking out the information, and great show, man. Thank you to everybody who jumped on. Our man Drew was on there. He was helping us out with names and giving us, I think, a new slogan for the show, Panic Premium. Our man FF Swirly was on doing it up. We saw people jumping in and out. We appreciate you watching us live, man. That's so cool. We're on Periscope. We're on YouTube. Watching us live, interacting. I say it every week that we, the show is better when we have, people interacting with us and, giving us the name of Logan Thomas, which I got right, and then said I was wrong and came up with another name. And, but it's fun getting all that kind of stuff. Appreciate you. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the bell, subscribe. Leave a comment on it if you want. Tell us that we're great. Tell us that we suck. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. We're down for all that. We want to make this the best show we possibly can for everybody who listens. Obviously, people are busy. Can't come on every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern and watch us either on Periscope or on YouTube. But you're listening to us on the podcast. Thank you. We appreciate it. Make sure you're probably subscribed if you are listening, but if for some reason you're not, make sure you subscribe. Leave a rate and review. We appreciate it, man. This is an hour and 6 minutes. We're into this thing now. That's a lot of time out of anybody's day. I don't care who it is. So we appreciate you spending that time listening to us talk our talk and maybe walk our walk. I don't know. We'll see when the season starts how much walking our walk we've done. But we appreciate all you guys watching and listening. So, Bill, on that note, my man, I think we are out of here.
Late.